In a recent video we posted, which was our top 10 keys to navigating the economic uncertainties of today, HCM and OCM were number 1 and 2 respectively in terms of the keys that are going to help organizations navigate the transformations most effectively in today's modern age. One of the key takeaways from this is that human capital management and organizational change management are going to be the most important things you can do to navigate uncertainty in terms of your organizational and transformational efforts in the coming years. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients through their digital and business transformation journeys. And I started my career as an organizational change management consultant. So I naturally lean heavily toward organizational change. It's something I'm passionate about, and deep down, that's the core of how I view the world and how I view transformation in general, is that it ultimately comes down to people. And while I've always thought this, and I still believe that to be the case today, I'm leaning even more heavily into that today, and I'm doubling down on the organizational change and human capital management components of transformation. But for a lot of companies, you may be wondering, what is it we do? How do we know what it is we should do differently from a human capital and organizational change perspective? And that's exactly what I want to cover here in today's video. So the first step to figuring out how we navigate the human capital and change management aspects of today's environment is to conduct an organizational assessment and really look at what are the nuances of what we're dealing with today. During normal times, you would look at things like culture and communications and overall morale. Those things are still important today, but now we've got to add another layer of assessment on top of that, which is, where are people's heads? What are the sources of anxiety? What are their fears? What opportunities do they see? In really trying to get a pulse on where people's heads are and understanding the nuances of what it is that we're going to have to navigate differently going forward as we transform our business. And by the way, a lot of us are going to be planning for a transformation of some sort, but for some of us, we're not planning for a transformation, but we're going to have to go through it anyway because we're forced to, because of changing times and changing realities. So whatever camp you're in, it's important to conduct that assessment to understand through online surveys and focus groups and other things we typically help our clients with, to understand what the current lay of the land is organizationally so that we can redefine our change strategy and plan to fit today's realities. So once we've conducted that organizational assessment, now we need to look at what is our organizational change strategy and plan. And it's not necessarily that we need to throw out the window the change strategy and plan we had before. But if you didn't have one, now's a great opportunity to create one, and you should absolutely have one. But if you did already have one, you certainly want to revisit that strategy and plan, because chances are you're probably going to have to change it. For some of you, you're going to have to change it significantly. For others, you might just make minor tweaks to the transformation you were planning on. And for many of you, it's going to depend on how you're affected by today's realities. Some of you are affected differently. Some organizations are affected more negatively than others. Some are actually facing more opportunity than others. So depending on where you are in the world and where you fall on that whole continuum or spectrum, that's going to affect and inform what that change strategy and plan should look like, which is why that whole organizational assessment that I mentioned before is so important. And regardless of where you fall on the spectrum, people's lives are different now today. On a personal level, as humans, our lives have been disrupted in a way that may never go back to normal. Will forever be changed by the events of 2020. We're going to be more sensitive to health. We're probably going to have economic issues we're facing. We'll probably have uncertainty and fear in our lives to some degree, for better, for worse. And we have to understand that as change practitioners and as leaders, to understand, how do we navigate that differently? How do we communicate to people differently? How do we develop change strategies that take that into account? The last thing we want to do is fearmonger or pile on to the fear and uncertainty that people have, but we need to be sensitive to it and be aware of it and watch for those pitfalls and landmines that go along with that. So developing that strategy and plan that helps us navigate those realities is something that's going to be very important in navigating human capital and organizational change management going forward. If you've seen any of my past videos or blogs about change management, one of the biggest criticisms I have about traditional organizational change management is that it's oftentimes very high level and academic. It's very theoretical. And I've always been critical of that approach. I think there's value to the high level strategic academic stuff, But at the end of the day, where the change really happens is down in the trenches, down on the ground, down where the battle is happening with the frontline employees. And this is even more true today. More than ever, people are craving direction, they're craving communication, they're craving leadership, they're craving understanding, they're craving empathy, all that stuff. So we need to make sure that our change management plan and strategy has less of this and more stuff down in the trenches, more focused on targeted needs that different parts of the organization are going to have. Different team members have different needs. They have different economic realities, different health realities, different changes of their business processes based on how the world is changing and your business is changing. So all those things have to be taken into account, and the cookie cutter, one size fits all, academic, theoretical type stuff, those days are over. We can throw those out the window for the time being, because where we need to be now is down in the trenches, tailoring our strategies and plans to address the specific needs of different parts of our organization. One often overlooked aspect of organizational change management has historically been organizational design. It's one of those things that not a lot of change practitioners do well, not a lot of transformation teams think much about it, but today that's a really hot commodity. We need organizational design more than ever. Partly because, as I mentioned before, people's lives are being disrupted, jobs are being disrupted, jobs are changing, business processes are changing. We need to understand and define what those business processes, what roles and responsibilities, and what this new world is going to look like for our organization. For example, a lot of organizations are facing strains in their supply chain because they can't keep up with demand because they sell food or consumer staples. For others, demand is dropping and we're having to reassign work. There might be layoffs, there might be changes to jobs or furloughs, whatever the case may be. But wherever we are on that spectrum or that continuum, we've got to figure out how to organize our business processes and how to organize our job roles and responsibilities to fit that new reality. So really taking an inventory of what our processes are, what the roles and responsibilities are, and what we think it's going to look like in that future state is going to be very important. And by the way, we also have to remain very flexible in this regard, because the chances are what we think is going to happen 30, 60, 90 days from now is going to change slightly from now as we continue down the path. So be sure you're looking at organizational design as part of your overarching organizational change strategy. The other thing we need to be aware of as change practitioners and transformation leaders is when we're thinking about human capital management, organizational change, how we manage people going forward, we really have to think about value. Where is the most important strategic value in the short term and the long term? Where are we going to get the most value? So there's certain things that might be nice to haves that would have worked in past times and better times, or when the economy was more stable or more certain. But now we've really got to hone in and focus on knowing that we have limited resources, we're going to have limited time and limited mind share with everything going on in the world right now. How do we navigate that and ensure that we're focusing on the highest value areas, the things that are going to help us through the current situation we're in, help us recover, help us stabilize, help us take advantage of new opportunities in a new world? All that stuff needs more than ever for us to focus on value. So organizational change management needs to be just as accountable as any other aspect of a transformation to ensure that we're focused on value. And even though it's, to me, the most important aspect of any transformation, especially now, even though I would love to see every organization spend a majority of their time and money on organizational change management, the reality is that time and resources are limited, and we've got to selectively focus where the highest priority, lowest hanging fruit is. So the better we understand where the value is, how it's going to enable our future, how it's going to deliver meaningful long-term results to the organization, the better off and the better received and the more effective our organizational change and human capital management efforts will be. So more than ever, we need better human capital management, better organizational change management. We need to manage people better. We need to have better processes in place, better support for them. We need to help transition them better than we have in the past. And hopefully some of these tips that I've provided here today give you some ideas on how you might refocus some of your efforts, redirect, assess, create new strategies and plans that accommodate the new realities based on where you are in today's uncertain times. I have included my contact information below. I encourage you to please reach out to me if you have questions or if you want to brainstorm some ideas. Like I said before, I've always been a change management consultant at heart and would love to brainstorm any ideas you have on how to navigate some of these new changes. I've also included some important and helpful links below. I encourage you to check those out. I invite you to please provide any comments you have. What are you experiencing right now in the world? How are you dealing with change? How are you people dealing with change? What are some of the lessons learned? What have you seen work? What pitfalls have you fallen into? I'd love to hear your feedback. We're all learning as we go through this together in many ways in this new environment. So I'd love to hear whatever feedback you have. So I hope you found this information helpful. Hope you have a great day. Hope you're being well, and we'll chat with you soon.